Welcome to Design System London number 10. That's quite a high number for us, actually. I'm very excited about that. We started off as a conference. I don't know if anyone in this room ever went to the London Design DSL conference. Nobody. Okay, great. That's just shows how long ago it was. So I'll take that as a good thing. Who is here for the first time this evening? Ooh, some new faces. Love that. Hope you will come back. Who has been here before? Returning customers. Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so welcome to DSL number 10. Let's get going. I should stop blabbing. Oh, this one has not woken up. I knew this was going to happen. There we are. So who am I? So my name is Luis Klevsjö, for those of you who dare to try to pronounce my very Swedish surname. I'm head of product design at YLD. So I have been hosting the DSL community events for a few years now. As I said, we started off as a conference, and then we kind of moved into a meetup because we really like this smaller format. Then, I don't know if anyone remembers, but the pandemic happened, so we moved online, which was fantastic, actually, because it gave us an opportunity to have speakers from all over the world. And then when that thing stopped happening and we were allowed to go back into person, we tried a hybrid scenario. Didn't really work out that well. So now we're just in person with people and speakers in the building, which is delightful. So the whole point of Design System London is that we want to give a space for people to talk about, obviously, design systems, but we want to give that space to anyone, regardless of their experience. So if you are just new to design system, you are in the right place. If you have worked with design system for a very long time and got a very lot of experience, you are also in the right place. So if you have never spoken before in front of a crowd and feel like, do you know what I want to do for next year for my growth, personal development? I want to put together a talk and talk in front of people. You are at the right place as well, because we welcome new speakers. And if you are a very seasoned speaker that have been speaking at many conferences across the globe and got vast experience and is not afraid of anything, you are also at the right place, because we welcome those people as well. So that's enough about me and Design System London. So let's take a look at today's agenda. The first part is already happening. That's me talking right now. I'm going to stand here so I can see it better. We got 3 fantastic talks today. The journey of our design system, which is technically not me, it's Baz and Jay and Finn and their journey, which is actually from where we are right now, from Accurx. Then we have Designing for Good, integrating UX and accessibility from RSCPA with Tim. I know this was to be a partner job, but poor Tim is going to do it by himself, which he's going to be in. So give him all that support. It's going to be ace. And then we have a quick break to eat more pizza and drink more drinks. And then after that, we come back with my lean design system framework with Marianne. And it's going to be a fantastic talk as well. So there's a lot to look forward to, and there will be a lot of learnings and a lot of takeaways. And in the meantime, during that break, have a chat with each other and comment on the talk and the speakers and see what you learned and see the experiences. And then what we'll end up doing at the end is a QA with all the speakers, and we get them all up on stage at the same time, meaning that if you have a question for any of the speakers, you don't only get their input, but you get the whole panel's input. And then if you feel, actually that question, I know the answer to that question, feel free to join in the debate and the conversation. Last time we had a great conversation, the whole audience was, yeah, it's good. So by all means, this can also be interactive. And I almost forgot the most important thing, the mixer at the House and Groom, which I believe is very close to here, just over the road. Wow, can't get closer than that. That's fantastic. So that's what will be later. A couple of quick logistics. Code of conduct, obviously very important. It's fairly straightforward. Keep your language clean, be nice to each other, and don't be offensive. And don't share any inappropriate content, whether you share anything from us on social media, etc. Speaking of social media, I always say, if you're not on it, how do people know it's happening? I was having a conversation today with our team thinking, do you know, it's almost the opposite now. Some of those social medias, like you maybe don't want to share to people that you're on there. I don't know. But this one is LinkedIn Design System London. We have a group there as well. So if you're not part of the group or not following us, you should, because then you get to know when the next events are happening. If you want a hashtag, I know Design Students in London, the best hashtag ever, longest you can possibly think of. But yeah, do please use at least any of those, because then you get to see all the other people that are sharing as well. I think that's it. Maybe for those of you who haven't seen, the bathrooms are over there, up the stairs, down the stairs, and then there's some over there as well. Exit is obviously that way. Let me see. Okay, so one QR code to rule them all. This is the one QR code you need today. Leave this up and see if it works. Sometimes it doesn't. It's always get exciting when live. Let me see. Can I guess? Oh, phones are up. Oh yeah, it's happening. Is it working? I'm looking now. Oh yeah, I get confirmation. Brilliant, it is working. So here you can basically ask questions to the speakers. That's the most important link. Then you can follow us. You can become a speaker in the future. There is a form there as well for you to fill out. And as I say, if you haven't got experience, don't worry, come and try it out. And you can also see any openings that YLD has, which is one of the sponsors. So this QR code is going to be present throughout, so don't worry if you didn't catch it now. But the link for Ask the Speakers, basically, if you don't feel brave enough to ask your question by putting your hand up and getting a microphone in front of you, we got the solution to that. You just pop the question in the Slido link, and then we'll get it up during the Q&A session. So we can't do these events without having our sponsors, and we got two main sponsors, which is YLD and Accurx, who are where, as I said before, where we are. So before we get going, I'm gonna ask Victoria from YLD. I know this is a favorite moment of the evening, is to come up and talk to all of you and tell you a little bit about YLD.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria, and I'm here to give you a quick intro to YLD and what we do as a company. So YLD is a software engineering, product design, and data science consultancy. We work with clients across different industries, which includes publishing, healthcare, renewable energies, and among others. So our mission is quite simple. We want to have our clients, and I forgot what I wanted to say, I knew this would happen. We want to leave our clients in a better place when we left them. And we do this by providing our expertise, by also giving them all the right tools to make them happen and succeed. So we do things from building a platform for live trading of energy stored in power plants to modernizing scientific research to tackle Parkinson's disease. And we're just very proud to be part of this impactful project. Community is at the heart of what we do at YLD. So this is why it's so important for us to be here today, to host these events, because we believe that we create a space and time for everyone and to share their knowledge, to meet new people, and also to create new ways to solve challenges. At YLD, we believe at continuous learning and also at the part of the community that it's so important to everyone. So I do encourage everyone here to take the most out of this opportunity tonight, speak to people around you, soak all of the knowledge tonight. And also, as Luis mentioned, you have a QR code where you can find all of the information that is needed. And if you want to chat to anyone from YLD team, we have like stickers or pins or T-shirts with YLD logo if you want to talk about our career opportunities or maybe projects, or if you want to know more about our community events. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Well done. That was Victoria's first time doing this, and I think she was fantastic, so well done her. It's not easy to get up in front of people if that's not what you're used to, so creds to that. Now I can see that someone else is getting ready. Don't worry, it's not over there, it's over here. Oh, excellent. Let me see. There we go. This is you, and from Accurx. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. Welcome to our house. This is Accurx. We working together to fix communication in healthcare. Some of our the things that we've achieved over our time is relatively significant. We've done a lot of amazing work. It's a place where like everyone comes and contributes to the mission, which is fixing communication in healthcare. The main thing to say is we're a lovely bunch of people. we're hiring for many roles, specifically design and engineering. So if you want to speak to any of us about any of the opportunities, have myself, we've got Dazn and Finn who are going to be giving a talk about the story so far, but there's a few of us dotted around. So yeah, come say hi. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Matt. And again, thank you to Accurx for having us in this actually very homely space. It's like you're in someone's living room, someone said to me earlier, and I agree with that. It's very nice. So that is the first part done. Now, just want to remind you about this fantastic QR code, and that apparently works. So get on that one, get your questions, and see all the openings, etc. We are going to move into the first talk. I want to welcome Dazn and Finn onto the stage and hear about their journey.
Thank you. Oh, there's the QR code. Oh, I pressed back. Here we are. Okay, cool. Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Finn, this is Baz. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about our journey of the design systems team at Accurx. So first of all, a little bit about me. I started as a graphic designer. I moved into product design, web design development, sort of not knowing what I was going to do. Eventually ended up at a accounting company called Xero, and I worked there for 7 years, sort of working as in the design systems team, eventually being the design lead there. And in June this year, I moved over from New Zealand. So started at Accurx, and yeah, we've just been sort of building up the design system team from there. So yeah, hand you over to Baz.
Cool. Hi, I'm Baz. I've been a front-end engineer for over 10 years, working in big companies like Ericsson and Rebby Media, as well as smaller startups, including Curve. For the last 3.5 years, I've been at Accurx. And as of August this year, I've joined the design system team.
Cool. So when we started thinking about what we're going to talk about for tonight, we were thinking, you know, we weren't sure what to do because both of us had been in the team probably not even 6 months. So we thought what a good plan would be is just talk about what we know, and that's sort of our perspective of watching the design system grow over time. Baz has been here a lot longer than me. Obviously, I started in June. So we just wanted to talk about the journey growing from sort of a community-driven library to having a full support from a team of 2. So hopefully we can, you know, share some stuff that you can relate to and just talk about some of the challenges we've been going through, and maybe you can take away something that you could apply in your own team.
So yeah, I'll be sharing like the journey of the Accurx design system from its like early days to how it stands today. I'll dive into some of the challenges that we've tackled along the way and highlight some of the key like decisions that have shaped its path. And Finn is going to be talking about his experience since joining Accurx in June, the opportunities, the challenges, and what we've learned so far. Oh, cheers, man. Oh, thanks. Okay, so let's go back to like early 2020. Like we had a few products up and running for users. However, our product UIs were struggling with consistency across layout and presentation, as well as accessibility. So we were using like bootstrap components, but we were starting to create more complex custom components at the time. So we decided it was time to centralize the few custom components we had into a single design library and create a customized set of design tokens to provide a more cohesive user experience across our existing products, as well as help us deliver products faster. So fast forward to July 2020, and the first version of Accurx web system, design system was born, and it was creatively named Accurx Web Design. You can thank Matt for that, and sat within our mono repo as a project. And as you can see here, like it's PR number 42 out of like currently we're on about 33,000. So it was very much like early on in the Accurx journey. So back then we had about 5 or 6 front-end developers, and it was basically all hands on deck, like managing the design system together. It worked out for a while, but looking back, it would have been smarter to have a dedicated person or a group in charge, or at least have a defined like process for contributing and maintaining. But being a startup our main focus was on delivery and growth. So design system was deprioritized and slowly diverged and became bloated as the organization grew. The lack of ownership and clear process would come back to haunt us. So yeah, I'm just going to dive into some of the challenges. So one of the biggest changes like the organization underwent was a restructuring in early 2021. The org split into two areas of focus. One part focusing on like GPs needs and the others trusts. And like, just for context, like an NHS trust is like a geographical healthcare organization, like responsible for providing healthcare, such as like emergency care and surgery to like a population defined region. So yeah, let's go back to, so splitting the org unknowingly to us at the time put up a barrier in terms of communication and collaboration and created challenges for both design and engineering. So here's some of the design challenges. So both parts of the business were focused on healthcare, but each sets of users needs were very different. GPs, so at Accurx, we regularly visit GPs for user feedback, but one of the things you'll notice is that their hardware specs are often outdated, especially their monitors, which can still run on pretty low resolution. This represents a major issue when it came to layout and spacing for new components, something that we still struggle with today. And also, like previously, Accurx's primary product was desktop-based, and GPs majority of the time used desktop screens. So mobile and tablet experiences were not prioritized due to delivery times and company goals. And trusts generally use a more diverse range of devices, which brought a different set of challenges for our designers. Like, how do we simplify really complex user experiences into mobile and tablet views? This brings me on to like development challenges. So remember when I mentioned that not having a clear defined process would come back to bite us? Well, here it is. So as our design approach diverged, so did our code. We became stricter and less trusting of our fellow devs. Our component architecture was very prop-based and tailored to specific use cases, making them inflexible for other parts of the business. Instead of having generic components, we ended up with very specific ones. Whenever we wanted to add new functionality to a component, it would just get piled on, creating increasingly complex components. There eventually came a point where using some of the design system components became harder than just creating a component from scratch. And yeah, as you can see, I don't know if you can see it clearly here, but this is one of the components in our library. It's a select component, and it has over like 20 variants on it. I'm looking forward to unpicking that, trying to get to it. So yeah, the other big like time-consuming issue we had to do was how the design system was set up. Since it was part of a mono repo, versioning wasn't a thing. If breaking changes were introduced, we had to update all instances of that particular component in all of our other projects that use the design system. It was just a really long process. So solving problems. So 2023 rolled on with 15 front-end devs now in the team. This thankfully opened up capacity, which allowed us to focus on design system a bit more. The first thing we addressed was moving the design system to an NPM package using Learner to manage package versioning and publishing. Definitely a step in the right direction. Around the same time, we ran a design system retro. The results weren't pretty, but it gave us the clarity to build a case to have a permanent design system team. Sorry. Yeah, team was born. So thanks to the head of design and head of engineering, Ron and Christian, as well as efforts from senior engineer and designer Liam and Minnie, our design system team came into being in early 2024. The first thing we did was set some agreed goals, which have served us well so far. And here's the goals that we set. So creating a structure to our design library, setting up dev and design processes, helping coordinate team efforts, decision-making, reviewing, approving quality of components, bringing any tooling in place to help product teams, reviewing the whole website and design. I think more importantly, we agreed what this team shouldn't do. Be the single source of decisions, update the website ourselves, or create custom components for product teams. So yeah, with the team goals clear, we embarked on a migration to replace our current components with the new set that fixed some of the immediate pain points that our devs were facing. We focused on 4 key areas of improvement: accessibility, flexibility, consistency, and documentation. So for accessibility, we started using Radix UI as our base for our components. All of our components must now pass ARC toolkit and Accurx dev tool testing. For flexibility, we moved more to a compound component pattern, and our components should now be generic and not specific to use cases. For consistency, we had to make sure that components are developed in a mobile-first approach and have a consistent set of props and naming. And for documentation, just provide clear documentation. So yeah, so how's the process? How's the migration going? The migration is in full flow. Thankfully, it's not just me migrating these components. We have an active community who engage with the design system team and are actively contributing. Plus, we've set up a new process whereby new joiners spend a portion of their onboarding contributing to the design system team. We're hoping this has a knock-on effect and builds advocacy. On top of the migration, we wanted to make sure that best practices and consistencies stick. So we've taken the decision to raise the foundations of the design system package. We now have a much stricter ESLint config. We have enabled hygiene templates to scaffold out boilerplate components with best practices built in. We have a common set of prop names and values, and we have clearer documentation examples. So we've still got a long way to go, but I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Baz. Oh, yeah, I should have given this to you, but then I felt like I wanted to do something. Do you want to click them? Yeah, okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so when I first joined Accurx, I was the sole designer on the design systems team as the previous product designer. Excuse me as well, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I'm going to grab my small bit of water. They'd just left earlier this year. So before they left, they'd started some great work on projects with the original engineer on the team to sort of kickstart the design system journey officially and formally structure the processes and tooling. So there was work underway on a new documentation website using Zero Height. A contribution modal had been sort of started and shared with people, but it also needed support. And there were lots of components in various stages of completion that needed to be finished off and sort of tidied up. And to me, coming in, it was like quite a lot of ambitious work going on at the same time, given the capacity of the team. But I was new, and obviously I don't have a full grasp of the maturity of the design system or the teams using it. I'm sure many of you know what it's like having someone come into a company starting fresh and they rock the boat straight away and they make a bunch of changes, really knowing what the impact of that would be. And that's something I kind of didn't want to do straight away. So I tried to avoid that the best way I could, which was by just taking notes of things that were going wrong. And not wrong, I guess, but just taking notes of things and that I didn't really know about and wanted to find out more about. So ultimately, I wasn't really sure what people's relationships were with the design system team, nor did I really understand how well the design system was working in all different areas that it had. So obviously the next step is to try get answers to those questions. So not knowing where the gaps are and not understanding users makes making decisions really, really difficult. So I knew as a team of only 2 people, prioritizing our work was going to be really, really important. Just make sure that the teams get the most value of the design system and yeah, because we can only work on so many things at a time. So if you're working on what you think is important, it might not be what is important for everyone. So yeah. So in order to prioritize anything, we had to first understand what was and of course what wasn't working well. So this is where I really focused my efforts starting out in the team, hoping that it would lead to a real focus of valuable projects that we can deliver. To understand kind of what the current state of the design system was, I wanted to survey both people who were using the design system as part of their daily workflow, but also, so those are like designers and engineers, obviously, but also people that support the teams using it. So talking to researchers, product people, so we could sort of call those enablers in this context. Additionally, I wanted to kind of do an audit of the existing design system assets, the processes, the tools, and identify any areas that could be improved from kind of my own perspective. The idea of this approach is to combine my experience working at a larger scale design system with the product knowledge and perspectives of people that work here already. The main reason for using a survey was to just gather real quantitative data on our design system's health. This gives our team an idea of how well things are going and allows us to repeat the process in the future, providing a bit of a trend on the design system's performance. In the past, I've found that it can be really difficult to quantify a design system doing well or not doing well. And I thought there was a really good opportunity coming into a really new design system to like start this off as a baseline. Obviously not having that data can cause issues down the line with not working on the most important things, but it also proves challenges with like communicating when you want more resource to support the projects that you want to work on, or even like celebrate success as a team. I think it could be important to be able to say like, hey, like we've done this really well, and having some numbers can be helpful for that. So for collecting data, yeah, early, that's something that we really wanted to do. So these are the questions we chose. They kind of just aim to cover the primary success measures of a design system. I figured that if we can measure aspects like autonomy, discoverability, understanding, and confidence, as well as how people feel the design system is impacting their product outputs, we'd be able to get a good picture of the areas we can improve on. It wasn't really surprising that through the first survey, we found that none of the areas really got great results. The team was new, and of course, up until this year, there hadn't been formal investment into the team. So it was great that what was really good, though, is that we surfaced areas that were underperforming more so than others, and that gives us an immediate sense of priority. And I'll come back to these bits in a little bit. So as I mentioned, we actually sent two surveys out. So the Enabler survey had similar questions to the consumer survey, but they were more tailored to asking about their perception of the design system success in the teams rather than sort of like individual day-to-day working. We were also able to like just segment the data by role. So that gives us a bit of an understanding of, you know, how engineers feeling versus designers, and dig into that data if we want to. And to give us an overall health score, we just sort of averaged out those scores for both surveys, and this is just going to be a useful metric to track over time. So that will sort of track the general health of our team. The other thing we did was surface an the average out score from both surveys for the specific question of I feel proud of our design system and would recommend other people to use it. It's a bit of like an EMPS score, I guess, and that's given us a sense of like the general satisfaction with the outputs of our team. And again, it's just something that we're kind of looking forward to tracking in our next survey. So we did this one in July, and so we're going to do another one in December and just try to do it twice a year. And although we haven't really gotten any trend data yet, I'm really optimistic that it's going to set us up for success into the future. And I just really like making charts. So that's kind of another motivating factor. So, so the second thing I wanted to take you through was our process for the audit. As I mentioned, I felt like this piece of work would be complementary to the survey. It's sort of like understanding what we could work on and give us some tangible ideas for improving the design system based off just sort of my previous experience and looking at what our gaps were. So the audit focused on two main areas, the Figma libraries as well as our documentation for using the design system, including or using the assets, applying patterns, and understanding the design system processes. Baz mentioned the component migration project, which was already been happening and focusing on refactoring our code for the storybook components. So we opted to kind of avoid looking at the components themselves because we knew that we'd be like looking at those as we worked through them as part of that migration process. The first exercise for the audit was basically just note-taking, going through everything and writing down opportunities and improvement ideas. And my notes were incredibly messy, so Shout out to ChatGPT. Obviously, someone needs to shout out ChatGPT in a presentation. So the other two people aren't allowed to do that now. Yeah, so they kind of just like organized all the notes basically into a format that we could use. And then we just did some affinity mapping to group the actions into themes, nothing crazy here, which gives us sort of an understanding of the core opportunities for improvement. And so when we did this, things started to shape up into like a clearer picture of how we could make progress in the design systems team. But we still face the challenge of deciding what to tackle first. So this is where the survey comes back in. So it is really cool that we collected that data from people using the design system. So we knew that helping people find, understand, and use the documentation was going to be helpful, as well as improving the relationship between our tooling. So that's kind of like a key area that we took from the audit. But we also identified a really growing gap in the design system space that had to do with sort of improving our components and patterns in a desire to converge the user experience and user interface. Over time, without the support of a system, diverging designs and code had crept into various areas of the product. And that's obviously to be expected. However, with the wider company goal of converging our experiences, the desire to... Oh, thank you. The talk was too good. This to be expected, but yeah, we had some company goals that were really leaning into this convergence theme. So that's what we wanted to lean into as well. So we knew that any work around convergence efforts were going to be our highest priority, basically. So let's talk about what we've been doing since the survey and audit. We've been prioritizing a number of projects focused on the user experience and interface convergence. The component migration project that Dazn has been driving was the main one, with us going through and updating every single component, which is no small feat. And we've been getting a lot of help from the engineers in Accurx, so shout out to those folks. On the design side, we've been running workshops to build off our updated design principles and evolve our UI visual language. Also a massive piece of work that has quite a few dependencies, which is mainly adoption of the design system. So we also need to update our components, improve adoption, and then update our UI. So there's quite a lot of work for the design systems team. So I'm hoping I'm employed for a while. And to complement the design work, we've also been aligning with product leadership on how we actually roll out these changes to all parts of the product. In an attempt to help people find the information they need and improve the connection between everything that we have, we've sort of drip-fed improvements across both design and development tools, as well as improving our documentation across the board. So we're hoping that our metrics on the poorly performing areas show an improvement because of this work. And we also asked some qualitative open-end questions, so it'd be good to get some feedback from people on that in December. And of course, there's a lot of work that is done just as day-to-day life as a design systems team. I'm sure people can relate to some of this stuff. To build engagement with teams, we've been working on and collaborating and listening to people with their problems and ideas to make the design system better. We've also been sending out a weekly update to improve visibility of the work we're doing. We've recently been given some product support, which is awesome. But up until now, we've been managing all of our planning and team processes, like the agile processes. And we're just super excited to hopefully have some more time on the tools, basically. And I wanted to share with you my favorite part of the design systems team. It's a fun incentive we've been running for the last 4 months or so. And if you take away anything from the talk, I hope it's this. An old colleague of mine was doing this at his previous job, and it's basically helping and drive engagement with teams, and I thought it was a really cool idea. The basic concept is when people do anything that positively impacts the design system space, we give them some Lego bricks. And the idea is that we can incentivize engagement and celebrate people helping out in the community. And obviously there's that Lego analogy that's really common with design systems. So the GIF's not working. It's like, how many are there? But basically, uncanny. The larger the engagement, the more bricks people get, obviously. So PR reviews are a common one that we get, that we give out a couple of bricks at a time. And the other day we had a designer that had a lot of capacity and she offered support for the whole day. So I was like, thank you so much. Here's a bunch of Lego. That's all I can provide you. But yeah, so it's just a way to say thank you and just like promote people, you know, getting involved. So asking questions in Slack, attending drop-in sessions, pairing on things. Those are some other ways that people have earned some bricks as well. So far, it's been a great success. As I said, I like a chart. Lots of engagement. Some people obsessing over getting the most bricks. It's just a small thing, but something fun like this has been making, I think, an intangible benefit to the support around the design system. So finally, we want to tell you about some things we've learned through our short journey so far. One thing that we've found really helpful is getting support contributing through the design system. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Because we've been refactoring our components, we've been asking engineers from other teams to get involved building them with us. And this has really allowed us to release those new components faster, while also getting different perspectives on building them and improving our code moving forward. And I've talked about this quite a bit, but yes, measuring things I think is really great. And I would recommend you send out a little survey regularly, see what you learn. And lastly, as a team that has ambitious goals but not much resource, we've had to communicate the realistic expectations of what we can deliver. And I think that's quite important because it sort of avoids that miscommunication of people thinking you can do stuff and you just can't. But it also allows other people to step in those leadership roles and say like, okay, well, this is how we can help you out. And that's happened quite a bit over the last few months. So definitely appreciative of those people. So yeah, that's it from us. Hopefully you found something interesting in what we've been up to. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much to both of you. Great, some really good insights there. I can see that the Slido link is kicking off. Can't wait for that Q&A. There's a lot of good questions in there already. So if you are sending your questions, keep them coming. If you want them to be directed specifically to any of the speakers, just mention their name as well, because it'll be easier for me. So that's just a little bag for me. Okay, great. So let's crack on with the next speaker. Let's see, I am very ready here. But before that, take a look at this fantastic QR code. So designing for good, integrating UX and accessibility. Please come on stage. Tim.
Right, so I have a confession to make. 3 years ago, when I joined the RSPCA, I wasn't sure what I was walking into. The brief was simple, or at least I thought it was: make the website look pretty. We've all been there. But as you can imagine, it quickly became clear that the real problem was much more than aesthetics. The NHS, sorry. The RSPCA needed to rethink how we connected with people digitally, how we tell our story, and how we create meaningful experiences for new users, donors, volunteers, and staff. Today, I want to take you on a bit of a journey through a journey of figuring out as we went along. At the start, we had no roadmap and no idea really of what was going to come next. We just had no plan. But now we have a robust design system with a multidisciplinary team, an advanced CMS, and we are collaborating between designers and developers daily, working at a scale and a speed we could never have imagined before. It's also about the future. As we move into our 4th year, I'll share how we plan to build on the foundations and how we hope to push those boundaries even further than before. But it hasn't been smooth sailing. There are highs and lows, and we've learned lots of lessons and plenty of moments when we've honestly stopped and asked ourselves, are we really making a difference? This is my story and my team's story. And I'll admit, by the end of the talk, you might feel like I've just used my personal therapy session. So, sorry. But I promise there is some reason to this. When I started at the RSPCA, the digital experience team it barely existed. We had one sole producer who was working tirelessly to handle every request that came in for the website. But it was clear that the system itself was barely holding up. The CMS we relied on was outdated and riddled with decades of legacy code. Not to slay any developers in the room. But it was patched together just to keep the site functional. To say it was fragile would be an understatement. Every day brought new frustrations. Just building the simplest page design felt like an uphill battle. The idea of doing an entire digital journey for our users, it was impossible. Still, we were excited. We were ready to make a change, and even if we underestimated just how long it would take. I'd love to stand here and say that, I stayed focused, I stayed small, but the honest truth is my ambitions got the better of me. I got a bit of a big head. And I jumped headfirst into a large project, and it was eye-opening. The experience of the limitations of the system hit me hard. I had to code changes in Google Optimize just to get something working. We couldn't handle any updates we needed. And there was a real challenge around the culture. Digital was treated as an afterthought. Most of the focus was on printed material, and there was little audience insights or best practice when it came to digital experiences and engagement. But even in the chaos, we managed to make an impact. By combining data and heat mapping tools, I was able to piece together a story about our users' needs. We used this to optimize the journey for email marketing, making small but meaningful improvements. But for the first time at the RSPCA, we were able, sorry, clicking the button there. We were able to show how focusing on our digital audience could drive real results. These experiments were small, but they mattered. They gave us a glimpse of what was possible. More importantly, they helped shift the focus even slightly towards understanding our digital audience. But I'll be honest, we didn't stay focused. With a small team, we were being dragged into every product and project imaginable. It felt chaotic. But in hindsight, this was just a real taste of what it's like being an NGO, where priorities shift and resources are stretched absolutely thin. Despite the distractions, that first year gave me the insight I needed to start building a plan. I developed a roadmap with 3 pillars. Effectiveness, where we streamline our tools, including creating a design system and a CMS that worked in tandem. Accessibility, laying the groundworks for accessibility standards across everything we built. And seasonal impact, prioritizing the major seasonal projects that made the biggest impact on our audiences. The roadmap gave me direction. It was ambitious, but it was something to build towards. As you can see in the first flower, I'm calling them flowers, most of the branches are short-lived. There's no clear pattern to the impact, but it reflects that first year perfectly. A time of exploration, learning, and honestly, a lot of chaos. One unexpected benefit of this chaos was no one was looking at me too closely. Without consistent stakeholder approval that had to go through or delays, I did have the freedom to lay the foundations of what came next. Year one was about survival and learning, but by the time year two came around, we thought we were ready to start building the framework for real change. We had had highs and lows, but we had high hopes of rolling out improvements quickly. Like most things, the progress took longer than we expected, and with that came an unexpected challenge. Year two started with so much promise. We had grown from a team of just one or two. For the first time, we had access to tools like Figma. I know it's hard to believe for you guys, but I had to actually fight for Figma Pro. We finally had a roadmap, a clear plan to action that gave us direction and purpose. We were building a culture, not just a team. We planned training times and adventure time together, creating an environment where exploration and learning were encouraged. Even more exciting, we got our first dedicated front-end developer, someone who could truly help us bring our ideas to life. I can code, but I'm not that good. By the end of the year, our team had grown to 4 designers, each bringing new energy and perspectives. It felt like we were really ready to move from survival mode to growth, with big ambitions and even bigger belief that we could make it happen. Maybe a bit too big. But as we quickly learned, ambition doesn't always align with reality. We kicked off the year with a win, creating a bet cost calculator as a proof of concept. Teams and directors started to take notice of what we could offer, but even with this small victory came with some challenges. The project had been delayed by 6 months from the previous year, and getting engagement from stakeholders wasn't easy. With momentum building though, we embarked on designing our first design system properly. Our focus was on creating a collaborative framework, a way for the entire UX team to work more effectively without constantly reinventing the wheel. It was an exciting challenge, but it quickly became clear that we were juggling too much. The CMS remained a significant burden, plagued by a legacy code and limited resource. With only 1 developer, we had to make tough decisions about what to prioritize. Even then, getting basic functionality working was a challenge. With our growing success came new pressures. Feedback increased as our teams got more engaged with. It was both a blessing and a curse. It pushed us to gather more data and insights and to be able to present our research. But we also were subject to a lot more internal sign-off that often felt disconnected from the user's needs and the project objectives. Progress was happening, but it was slower and harder than we had imagined. Still, there were moments of real achievement. The design system was one of our biggest successes, allowing us to present a consistent front across projects. It enabled us to work at scale, freeing us up time to focus on discovery and research. We delivered some impactful tools, including an interactive education platform and an animal welfare triage tool, which was designed to guide users through their journeys and reduce our calls cost. We revamped the templates and structures for all of our appeals, building on email journeys and furthering the conversation about a digital-first approach. And perhaps most importantly, we began to make research and user needs a core part of the conversation. For the first time, we could present users' voices alongside the charity's needs. It wasn't perfect, and we didn't always make the right decisions, but we were consistent in our methods and our language, and that consistency has paid off. The second flower represents growth and progress. By year 2, the demand for the UX had grown significantly, and our impact was expanding with larger and more ambitious projects. We were now on the second version of our design system, refining and building upon what we had started. However, with growth came new challenges. Stakeholder feedback began to spiral out of control, and too many voices weighing in and often pulling us in different directions. Delays in receiving assets, further extended project timelines, adding to the strain. Technical limitations continued to hold us back, restricting what we could deliver. But despite these challenges, we had a clear path to address them in year 3. The roadmap we'd carefully structured didn't quite uphold as a plan, but we adapted and learned and accomplished a great deal. The CMS still was holding us back, forcing us to adapt and prioritize ways that prioritize in ways that weren't always ideal. And everything changed. By the end of year 2, it felt like a real slog, but we had seen real progress. We had laid the foundations, and we had started embarking on real research and making some progresses. But suddenly, we were tasked with something greater, with the announcement of the rebrand. RSPCA decided to rebrand, right, as we were getting started. Year 3 would test everything we had built so far. Could we deliver on the promise of a design system, modernize the CMS, and navigate the chaos of a brand overhaul? Year 3 was all about one thing, the rebrand. It became the sole focus of the year, culminating in the public launch in April. But the rebrand required far more than updating the visuals. We had to update the CMS to support the new brand. We had to build and refine the design system. We had to fix tens of thousands of pages to work and update with the system. And then we had to figure out how to update that design system again to accommodate the rebrand. And then we had to test and make sure that we could switch it over in an instant on launch night. It was an enormous undertaking, and we did not have the time. I'll be honest, the first half of that year felt chaotic. We all worked overtime. The pressure was relentless. Every member in the team mucked in, editing the site and the CMS, coding, writing content, whatever needed to be done, we did it together. It wasn't glamorous, but this collective effort had an unexpected upside. It helped us truly understand each other's roles and challenges. By working shoulder to shoulder, we had built a stronger sense of empathy and teamwork. Meanwhile, my time was consumed by meetings, managing stakeholders, and comforting a lot of directors that everything would be fine, all while quietly planning out multiple alternatives and scenarios just in case it didn't go to plan. And trust me, there were a lot of it didn't go to plan. We try not to talk about it. The brand was delayed multiple times. Critical assets were missing, and believe it or not, we didn't even receive the main rebrand assets for the campaign until the week before the launch. So, we didn't see some of it. But despite the chaos, the rebrand did bring success, and it was a successful launch in April. But the true story wasn't what people saw on the launch day. It was what happened behind the scenes. The rebrand really did become a trail by fire, and it transformed our team. We demonstrated to the entire RSPCA that a team focused on effectiveness, working in an agile manner, and collaboratively could respond rapidly to every problem it faced and still deliver. And while the rebrand happened in April, the ripple effects have been ongoing. For months afterwards, it felt like we were in recovery mode. We joked about things such as saying, well, it's because of the rebrand, this delay. But the reality was that the process had taught us invaluable lessons about planning, adaptivity, and collaboration. Out of the chaos came a new team process. We knew we needed a better way to structure our time. Something that would allow us to deliver our core work while leaving room for exploration and growth. That's where we introduced our 60-30-10 model. Structured around a 2-week sprint, we set 60% of our time dedicated to core tasks and requests that came from around the charity. 30% are for new experiences and optimization. I say that because my boss is in the room and I'm not allowed to say pet projects. 10% was devoted to training and skill development. Don't get me wrong, we haven't stuck to this perfectly. It goes up and down the scale, but we do track it, and it has brought some lovely successes. And more importantly, it just gives us a framework to move from being just a service team, but to a team that engages and drives the charity forward. We are making a splash and everyone is watching us. The shift has allowed us to grow significantly. My poor team would say that we've become a victim of our own success, with every request now coming to us, and we are considered first at the beginning of every project. But we are starting to set larger research budgets and building processes that ensure users' needs are front and center. The CMS, once our greatest point of pain, is now in perfect harmony with our Figma, creating a single language that connects our designers, developers, and producers. We've gone from questioning whether we can create an experience in a year to prototyping something in just a week. The transformation is impossible, but it is there. So as you can see in year 3, this flower, there have been some long project timelines, delays and singular focus leading to April. The rebrand was massive, and it consumed our team's energy and resources for months. Adapting to consistent delays, missing assets, and shifting priorities became the norm. Even after the rebrand launched, the impact lingered. The team needed to recover and rest after such an intense effort. But this flower also represents the benefits. The rebrand forced the update of our systems, solved technical issues, and streamlined processes that had previously held us back. By the end of the year, those foundational improvements started to pay off, and the challenges of earlier years began to fade. The flower reflects not just the challenges of the rebrand, but also the progress we made on turning those challenges into our stronger and more unified foundation. It sets the stage for year 4, where we're building a clearer vision and a more balanced way of working. Year 4 is all about driving the charity forward. After years of survival, building and delivering under pressure, we're now focused and unlocking new possibilities in creating a sustainable ways of working. One of the key focus areas this year is the CMS. We've already come a long way in aligning it with our design system, but now we're using that foundation to unlock new potential. The more we refine it and the quicker we adapt, react, and innovate, the more impact we can make. We're also driving deeper into the use of AI, from supporting workflows to enhancing accessibility. We're exploring how these tools can help us scale and make a bigger impact. Alongside this, we're creating a program to ensure that accessibility and inclusivity become embedded in every corner of the organization, not just our digital team. This isn't just a box-ticking exercise. It's a commitment to designing for everyone and staying true to the charity values. Another exciting shift this year is how we're working as a team. We've moved beyond dictating by one individual to collaboratively setting objectives and feeding into a team roadmap. It's more collaborative process, setting for a stage for longer term success. And finally, we're upgrading from Trello and Google Sheets to a proper planning tool. We have been doing all our sprint planning in Google Sheets. It takes up too much of my time. Giving us this, all of this is going to give us the structure we need to plan and execute at scale. Everything is going to feed into everything else. Of course, there's still been challenges ahead. Communication between teams is one of the areas we need to focus on. We're focusing on creating supportive frameworks that reduce development costs and improve efficiency. And we're also working to find a new rhythm, one that is less reactive to the wider charity's problems and more intentional, driven by the team's structure and goals. This year's flower represents hope. It represents a shift from relying on big, milestone-driven moments to building on lots of smaller moments that connect and build upon each other. It reflects our growing ability to take control of our work rather than being at the mercy of external delays and pressures. As we refine our design system and our CMS and processes, we're learning to react faster, recover more effectively from setbacks. We're also benefiting from our continued success, finding cross-team collaboration more fruitful than ever. Next year, we really hope to align our roadmaps across teams, creating a single focus that drives the entire charity forward. Looking back over the past 3 years, it's incredible to see how far we've come. We started as a team of one with no roadmap and no idea. And now today, we're a team with a clear vision, driving innovation and collaborating across the charity. There are 3 key lessons I want to leave with you. It all takes time. Growth isn't linear, and every setback is an opportunity to learn. You can predict what might happen. You can't predict what might happen, sorry. So, just think small and impactful. Think small and impactful. Those early wins may feel minor, but what sets the foundation for a larger success is consistency and always champion the user first. Finally, focus on a roadmap. Even when the path changes, having a clear direction is what keeps you moving forward. Year 4 isn't the end of our journey. It's just another chapter as we continue to refine our processes, tools, and collaboration. The possibilities ahead are endless. Every lesson we've learned along the way has shaped how we as a team have approached our work. For us, we're not just about creating better experiences. It's about driving meaningful change and ensuring everything we build reflects the values of the RSPCA. But this reflection isn't just for me and for my team. It's for you. I challenge you to take a moment to reflect on your own journeys, your careers, and with your teams. Where is your team right now? Celebrate and remember the wins and the things and the challenges you've learned. And as you think about next year, consider what steps you can take just for your team, but for everyone you serve. Every team's journey is different, but one thing is universal. When we focus on designing for good, we create something that will last. I hope that hasn't felt too much like a therapy session. But yeah, thank you and good luck to all of you next year.
Thank you so much. I definitely think there are a few things in there that we can all identify with. I mean, who hasn't had a brand exercise happening at the same time as the design system? Yes, I'm getting some nods and some nervous laughter. We all been there. I also think it's quite typical as well how you start a journey and halfway, well, quite early on, you ask yourself, have I made the biggest mistake of my life? And then eventually it all becomes a lot better. And I think we all share that. So if you're in that part right now, where after having listened to this talks thinking, Jesus, what have I signed up for? As you can see at the end of the talk, it does get better. And that's why we're here as well, to help you all out with your challenges. So I think, yes, he stole this. Sorry, I'll take that back. Thank you. Yes. We are actually going to go for a very quick break. I'm going to give you to 8:05. I think that's the time, if I'm looking correctly, which will give you 15 minutes. Leg stretcher, go outside if you have to. It's freezing, so maybe don't. Grab some drinks, grab some quick pizza, have a quick chat with each other. We're going to talk a lot more later afterwards, and then we're going to come back for our third and final talk. Keep adding the questions to the Q&A. It's going to be a great Q&A. It's got some really good questions already. But see you guys here at 8:05. Thank you. We are back. Loving the networking, the connections, fantastic. It's all happening. This is what we want to see. It's part of why we're here. Okay, so yeah, thank you everyone. So we're going to crack on, continue. We are going to hear from Marianne about her Lean Design System framework. So please welcome to the stage, Marianne.
Thank you. Hi everyone, you're right. I always think that sounds so weird with a northern accent, doesn't it? It's a little bit like, you're right. Bit strange. I never know how to hold a microphone, and I'm a bit of a notorious nose breather. It's a curse of this large nose. So if I start sounding a little bit like Darth Vader, tell me to move the mic a little bit further forward. So today, I'm going to be talking about my LeanDS framework. Hopefully, you might be able to take some nuggets from it, hopefully find it useful. And it's going to be a little bit about my experience and learnings of working on design systems. So before I jump straight in, just to give you a little bit more of a summary about what to expect. So firstly, as mentioned before, it's going to be a little bit more about my methods and approach to leading a design system. So everyone's journey is slightly different, but this is from my experience. Secondly, I'll then share some kind of snippets and approaches in regards to user research for a design system team. And then thirdly, I'll share a framework which will ensure that you are synchronized with your organization. I always think synchronized sounds like a bit of a strange, slightly peculiar word, but aligned with your organization and making sure that you can balance your team's capacity with what you actually need to get done and the resources that you've got. So because we all like to talk about the highs and lows of a design system, and that seems to be the thing that joins us together as a community, I thought we'd talk about the perceptions of a design system within an organization, because we all know that the perception is actually very different to the reality. So design systems can often be perceived as having everything ready. You know, someone will come to you, be like, "Oh, have you got that? We need this specific component," and they just expect that it's going to be there ready. Sometimes it is, and then they expect that it's going to work perfectly, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And the design system is obviously an evolving creature, and that's not always understood within the business. So that vision of perfection sometimes isn't always the reality. And additionally, curious if anybody else has found this, but from my own experience, I've found that design system teams are often expected to work really, really fast. And you become seen almost as this like support and response team. You have to kind of then just react and just sort of get involved really quickly, or often too late in the process. It'll be too late down the line. And then finally, this could be a little bit controversial, but from the outside perspective, those that aren't in the design system team, they just think that you're like the fun team. You're just sort of doing whatever you want. You just kind of, you know, the grass is greener over on that side, and they're just kind of just having a right old laugh. And, you know, we are having a right old laugh, but it's, it's a bit of a graft as well. And then the reality of a design system team is sometimes a little bit more like this. There's more Lucille Ball gifts because, you know, why not? You might have many sessions, office hours and conversations that will often just leave you feeling a little bit like this, and you just feel like you're banging your head against the brick wall because you're just like, oh God, I'm talking about this thing again. And then you're constantly having to think on the spot. You're sort of, because you're in the design system team, you sometimes, I'm curious if anybody else finds this, you're expected to have all the answers all the time. And you're just seen to not only react quickly and work quickly, you've just got to know everything. You're supposed to just be this kind of like oracle of knowledge all the time. And, you know, we are experts in our field, but we're human at the end of the day. We don't always know everything. And that's why this community is great, because we can learn from one another. And then there's the backwards and forwards, and the constantly asking for more, the more adoption, the more support, the more resources. And, you know, it's definitely a bit of a ride, isn't it, working in a design system? And I think you can probably tell that when somebody asks you what your job is, and, you know, it kind of goes a little bit like this. It'll be like, oh, what do you do for a job? Oh, okay. Yeah, I work in design systems, actually. Yeah. Oh, really? What's that? I don't know what that is. Wait a minute, sit down. We've got a few hours. Actually, no, I need to, I've just got to go. No, seriously, just sit down. I'll tell you all about it. 5 years later, you're still talking about buttons. And there's no wonder that a design system is such a ride, because the life cycle of a design system is quite up and down. And there's a real kind of consistent evolution that we see through everybody's design system journeys. So let's look at that a little bit more. And I'm curious to know if anybody aligns with these stages in the design system life cycle. So if we look at the beginning, when you're in the growth phase, I'm forgetting to breathe. Let me just breathe. Oh, right. Start again. If we're at the beginning and you're at the growth phase, this is the party time phase, the energy levels are pretty high. So you've got a lot of energy, enthusiasm for the design system. People might be rallying around it. It could be a bit frantic. There could be a little bit of resistance, but generally it's fun times. And you've got the wind in your sails. You're sort of off to the horizon. It all feels, you know, pretty blue skies and happy sunrises, sunsets, whatever. After that, then you might glide into the phase of optimization. And this is, what happened then? This is a little bit trickier, but it's still within the fun zone. And this is when you're probably thinking properly about the standards and the best practices that you really want to establish. So you're getting more kind of locked down into those foundations. You might even be doing these things from scratch. It's quite freeing, and it feels really, really rewarding at this point. Phase 3 sadly, starts to head off the party track, and that goes a little bit more into business track. So your organization might have had some changes. Teams spun up, teams broken down. The design system team might have expanded or pivoted. Senior management might even be saying, but we've finished the design system now, like, isn't it done? And at this point, you know it's really not finished, but the rest of the business might not understand what that means and that it's actually not finished. The design system work and offering is actually doubled or tripled. So the org really needs more buy-in. You know, the strategy has got to change for a design system. And then finally, you might reach the final stage of full design system maturity, and then you're into maintenance territory. So you've got a lot of great hairs. You've probably got a few more wrinkles as well with it, just through pure stress. But it's still fun, still challenging. But it's a different kind of fun, and it's a different challenge to what you were experiencing right at the beginning. And if you were particularly interested in my topic today, then you might be in one of these two phases, potentially. And you might also relate to this meme, because there's quite a difference between building a design system and maintaining one. I'm judging from the laughs on this side that you relate to this. But let's not get too down in the dumps about design systems, because like most of us here today, we've all been there, seen there, and got the t-shirt, and they might drive us a little bit loopy. But we all really love them, don't we? They are great. And they are, as mentioned before, just endless conversations about buttons most of the time. But they do provide huge value to teams, businesses, and products. And that's why they're so addictive and so rewarding. So let's look at some data to put that into perspective. This is quite an old report. So in 2019, InVision published a report about design maturity across the digital landscape. They got around 2,200 respondents, and they were able to synthesize the data into a really interesting way. So what you can see here is the output of levels of maturity from the respondents. So they were ranked from level 1 all the way to level 5. So level 5 is like the ultimate kind of goal for design maturity. So much so that the level 5 companies were labeled as visionaries, because they were the ones that were driving design as a business strategy. And what separates this top 5% from the rest is that they were tackling design in a holistic 360 way. Therefore, they were seen as the ones that were providing huge financial impact to the business through design. And what was also interesting from this report is that one of the common threads from this level 5 group of mature companies was the presence and impact of design systems. So 82% of level 5 companies had established UI best practices, and nearly 80% also regularly updated it. Whereas if we look at level 1, there was only 30% of the respondents said that they updated their design system, and less than half of them had established best practices. So there's naturally other things that do contribute to design maturity, but I do think it's evident that you can see the impact from this report that design systems is a key tenet of design maturity. And why should the design system care about design maturity? Well, well. These numbers, I think, speak for themselves. So you can see level 5 company has got 4 times more impact on revenue than level 1, 5 times more impact on cost saving, 6 times more impact on time to market, and then a massive 26%, I'm getting right muddled up with my words tonight, 26 times more impact on company valuation. So they're not really numbers that you can snub at when you look at kind of design maturity and the benefits. So when you see the wider impact of design on the business and the ecosystem that it lives in, it's important that we should consistently keep shouting from the rooftops, you know, that design systems are not just a design thing, you know, as we all do know that in this room. However, more recently, earlier this year, you might have seen this one. It feels like it was last year because this year has just turned into a blur for me. But earlier this year, Zero Height released a report which had a couple of data points that really spiked my interest. So the first one was this, and it was 66% of respondents said that they'd set goals for their design system. And I saw this and I was like, that's awesome. That's really, really good. But then this bit left me a little bit uncertain, because when they were asked then further about their goals and the broader alignment, only 38% aligned to the organizational goals, and then 36% to the product goals. So combined, those figures are relatively positive, but individually they are lower than what I would have expected. And I think this is because I think aligning your design system to your organization and product goals is really fundamental in today's vulnerable market that we're in and what we're seeing with teams breaking down, etc. I'm a big fan of Stafford Beer. He was one of the godfathers of cybernetics, and he created models and frameworks for operational efficiency. Many of these are still relevant today. Check him out if you've not heard of him. In 1985, he wrote a book called Diagnosing the System, and this quote comes from that book. And I really love it because I can actually see great relevance to design systems in it. Because it's true that a design system can only survive in a particular sort of environment if you've got the buy-in and support. The existence of a design system and design system team is somewhat separate, and we always sit on the outside a little bit, and that works because we do need that level of autonomy. But the most key part in this statement for me is the last part. It cannot survive in a vacuum. A design system needs to connect and work with the users and the business. And I think that this is really, really important to design system teams today. Last week, I joined Ben Callahan on his latest episode of The Question. I don't know if has anyone heard of Ben or attended any of his, yeah. If you're not familiar, check him out. It's really great. And you can sign up to one of the sessions and anyone can drop in. They're really, really great. It's all community. This particular episode, our topic, we chose to do about design system stability. And we asked participants a question. And that question was, has the company where you work had a major change of some kind in the last 12 months? I, for one, have gone through that and are still going through that. I'm sure many other people in this room might have gone through similar as well. And we had around 70 respondents to this question, and around 80% said that they had experienced some sort of major change. The second question did seem to divide people, though. So we asked then, have you experienced the failure of a design system because it couldn't adapt to a major shift in the organization? 40% of the participants that had said that they'd had a major change said that they had been in some form of design system failure. However, the word failure seemed to give people the ick. And participants didn't really like this, and they referred to it more in terms of serious hurdles or deprioritization, that kind of thing. I think it's less harsh that way, isn't it? No one likes to often use the word failure. Still on the same track, I guess. But what we did see were some common themes in how people described perceived failure. The first one was the inability to adapt quickly enough to new business needs. The second was loss of executive support and resources, and the disconnect between system capabilities and new organizational priorities. Now, I think that there are things that can be done to help remedy some of these issues, and that's what I'll be sharing shortly. But firstly, let's talk about research. Design system research is integral to understanding our users and our place within the business. This was mentioned earlier. Without strategizing, planning, and digging into this, well, you might as well just detach all your components now, because you really need to understand who's using the system and how they're using it. I like to break research down into 3 key areas. So awareness and perception, usability and discoverability, and adoption and contribution. And for the purpose of this framework, I'm referring to internal user research. So not the users of the end product, but users that the system supports. So your designers and developers, mainly anyway. So worth also noting that the scope and cadence of research changes depending on the focus area, which I'll go into a little bit more in a second. But if we zoom out just a little bit and think about the overarching areas of focus on a design system, then in theory, it essentially boils down to 2 primary areas: infrastructure and then operational. And what I mean by infrastructure is the core of a design system, so the libraries, the design tokens, the documentation, the pieces that are the heart of what we base everything around. And then what I mean by the operational side is essentially the workflow, the communication lines, basically anything that we do to ensure that the infrastructure thrives. Starts to step a little bit into kind of design ops thinking in some sense on that side. But what you can see here with these 3 key areas of focus is that one is tapping more into the infrastructure side, the other is tapping more into the operational side, and then you have that part that meets both in the middle. So by thinking about how you research and focus, if you connect from one side to the other, then you can ensure that you have a more holistic view of your users. So first up is adoption and contribution. So that's how teams are using the design system and who's adding back into it. And this area is essentially the foundation of your research. So when you're up and running and at a stage of consistency, you should be aiming to monitor this quite regularly. I recommend monthly, but it depends on your team structure and org model. But what you're looking for at this point is more quantitative data on your adoption and contribution rates. How you slice that up is dependent on, as mentioned before, how you're set up and what data you actually have available. The example list there is by no means exhaustive. That's just a few examples of types of things that you could measure. Figma analytics, deployed code. If you run triage sessions or open office, is there something that you can track there? You might not have all the answers, but the key here is to find a way to gather some consistent metrics. Usability and discoverability is the next level up, and the frequency of this research reduces here too. This is the area where you'll be looking across infrastructure and operational, and that's where you really want to get down to the ground and understand how users are actually using the system day to day. So not just looking at usage, but also looking at how it's functioning. So you could gather a mix of quantitative and qualitative data here. And in terms of frequency, probably more like every 3 months, potentially. You could be running surveys or user interviews. Surveys are great. And if you can get a good response to surveys, then I really strongly encourage that. But sometimes it depends again on your company and team, but I've found that sometimes they can fatigue people and they feel a little bit repetitive. So one of the things that we've been trialing is getting a little bit more ninja about it, let's say, a little bit more detective about how we can get that type of feedback. Kayo, who's in my team, spends quite a lot of time working closely with designers and developers to really get under the hood and understand some of those details. He also sets up quite a lot of various Slack workflows to try and prompt more engaging, fun responses to try and understand perception. You could go broad with it, or you could focus on an area where you might know that there's particular pain points. For example, when we introduced dev mode to our workflow, we were monitoring it quite closely and quietly for quite a long time. So we had more regular, not necessarily surveys, but more of the a kind of detective approach and more one-to-one scheduled to try and understand how that was working for the teams. So having that mix of how you approach this will really help conversations that you might need to have later down the line. And then finally, at the top of the tower is awareness and perception. And this is purely qualitative data, to be honest. And it's done less frequently, but it's where you can check the perception of the design system across the org. So this is really beneficial when it's not just your primary users, when you start to fold in secondary users as well. So not just designers and developers, the ones that are using it day to day, but you want to go to delivery, to product, you want to go higher as well. Talk to your directors, talk to other senior management, other stakeholders that you may have to work with within the design system space. And this is really beneficial because through doing this type of thing and having these conversations outside of your primary user base, you'll start to potentially see some potential warning signs of how the design system could be viewed quite negatively. Because if they don't understand it, they might perceive that it's slowing things down just because they don't have the understanding. So what you can then do is, if you see that that is an issue or a pain point, you could then plan to focus with those user groups a little bit more in your roadmap, more kind of evangelizing the design system, more onboarding sessions, etc. So you should be doing this less frequently because you do need good data distance between the data points, and you do need to think about the space to evaluate change as well. So if we look at how you could coordinate the research throughout the year, I'm pretty aware that this is a little bit OCD and ridiculously organized and structured, and no one in the right mind would work in this way, but just for illustration purposes. You need to think about how you flex the timings to work for your needs. And it's not about having it perfectly locked down. It's about having some kind of rhythm and routine to having that feedback loop with understanding your user base and some way of making sure that it is part of what you're doing day to day. And you've got then that is you've got that ingrained in terms of analyzing that more frequently. So you have to just figure out what works for you. So hopefully that all made sense and seems simple and useful to follow. However, as we all know, as mentioned before, design systems are never simple. If only they were. But then we probably wouldn't be having meetups like this, would we? We operate in spaces. I really wish that there was a Lucille Ball GIF that I could have put in here. I was going to put a face over that, but there isn't because this one just works the best really. But here we go. The business, I always think that design systems can be a bit like this, like trying to work on a moving train. The business direction often twists and turns, and then it might move slowly, and then it might move quickly. And the design system team are often expected to just flex with it. And it's part and parcel of the area, but there are things that can be done to mitigate this pressure. So what if we had a design system framework? Subtle segue there. Jeff Gotheth designed and created the Lean UX canvas around 2016, and it's often used as part of the design system, product design process. Everyone's probably really familiar with this. As you know, it's made up of 8 pieces, and the function is to build a shared understanding of the product, users, and expected outcomes. It's really robust, and it helps to build hypotheses. And the reason is that at the core of the Lean UX canvas, the goal is that teams want to focus on outcomes and less on deliverables, which is perfect for design systems because we support this mission, because we want to focus on reducing time and focus for teams to focus on the deliverables. However, I personally found that when I was trying to apply the Lean UX canvas to a design system team, you start to hit some hurdles because there's some gaps missing in how we connect to the wider organization. So what I'd like to share with you now is my take on the Lean UX canvas, adapted Frankenstein for design systems. And because I like to do everything in threes for some reason, I split this into 11 sections over 3 key areas, inspired by Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, which it starts with a Y. Check that out if you're not ready already. Understanding the purpose, the what, understanding the drivers and motives, and then understanding the feasibility, so the why. And this is how it looks. And what you can see is the middle part, the purple bit, that's pretty aligned to the core of the Lean UX canvas. And then I've kind of like sandwiched, Frankensteined something on to either side to provide wider context. The first section is split into 3 parts: the wider organization, business goals and objectives, system problem. And I'll just quickly walk you through at a high level, like really high level, how you could fill this out. When you do it yourself, obviously, you'd probably go into a lot more detail. The more information that you can add, the better. So first up, the wider org. Let's say we are a media broadcast company serving video content across 6 platforms. If you work at an enterprise level, then this particular section could get quite complicated, but it's really valuable and important because it helps to understand where you are in that big pond. Business goals and objectives could also get quite detailed, but say at a glance, the goals are to improve workflow efficiencies and increase views and increase subscriptions. System problems. Now, this might be a long, and remember, it's not a wish list, but it could be a long list of problems. But this is where you have the data from the research that you've done before to help feed into this. So what you might see here, that there might be an efficacy problem and users are not using the design system. There could be workflow dependencies, and teams actually see the design system as something that is slowing them down. And there might just be like confusion about what is the single source of truth. The middle section is made up of 5 pieces: system users, user benefits and outcomes, metrics and measurements, solutions, and then your hypothesis. So let's look at some examples here. System users, you might have primary and secondary users who work across 6 squads. User benefits and outcomes. So what do we expect our users to get from the design system? Well, they can use it at ease, they can design and build faster, they can test and ideate quicker, and they can have more coherent UX and UI. Metrics and measurements, again, will come from your research and the information that you've gathered and what you already know. But as an example, you might know that there are tons of detached components each month. You may have started to track delivery tickets and see there's something within the duration of those. Externally, you might have developed some understanding of user ratings, and you might even have insights from various other tools that you use, such as Chromatic or other things like that. And then solutions. This is where you can start to ideate loosely on some proposed solutions. So again, this is quite high level, but you might improve form element components because you've realized and seen that in 5 triage sessions, there's quite consistently things missing. You might need to refine the workflow to speed up teams to iterate quickly. And you might not have a single source of truth, so you need to mitigate that confusion. And then the final piece of the hypothesis, so we're going to come back to that when we finish the last section. And the final part is the how. So this is the feasibility aspect, and this is where you have to be honest. Honesty is key about your team structure and the dependencies that you've got. So if you're really, really lucky and you've got a 100% centralized team of designers and developers, then there might not be as much that you can put in this, but that could also be, that's usually quite rare. If you've got that, go you, winning at life. But for my example here, I work with a distributed model, distributed team. So centralized design support and distributed engineering support across 6 squads. And because we're distributed, we have then a potential risk of dedicated engineering support. And then we're also impacted by the time-dependent work that's happening within the other areas of the business. So live events or quick turnaround projects, because there's commercial, contractual, various bits and pieces, things that might require you to move a little bit faster and support a little bit more hands-on. And then finally, the plan section. This doesn't need to be a detailed plan. This will come later when you start to properly break down the work within your team. But here you're just calling out any planning goals at a high level. So for example, you might actually know that there is a live event happening. This is very, I realize this is very specific to ITV, but you might know that there's a live event happening in Q1, so the likelihood of you getting any engineering support because you work distributed is probably going to be a little bit slim in that quarter. So you might then adjust and think more about what can be achieved ahead in Q1 so that you can then ensure that when you get engineering support in Q2, you're prepared for that. You might then also have other time-sensitive things that you need to consider, things that you might need to test and validate to ensure that everybody is using things correctly and you've got everything brought in. Some of these things can be seen as scope and risks. But what's important is that you call these out and you keep them in this planning area, because this will help you later when you're trying to coordinate everything. If we jump back to the hypotheses box, now that you have all the information, you can start to build the hypotheses from those other areas. You can write this however you feel more comfortable. This is ridiculously long, and no one in the right mind would reuse this, but it's good to have it in your back pocket because there may be elements that you'll pull into other conversations. And what it's doing is it's helping to build that story of how the design system fits within the larger ecosystem. So first up, we believe that tackling workflow dependencies in line with our core streaming organization and our business objective to improve delivery inefficiencies, we will help our primary users, designers and developers, to design and build faster with more coherent UX and UI. Success will be shown by shorter delivery ticket lifecycle. We plan to achieve this through refining the current design system workflow, and this approach will be supported by our core design system team, whilst considering impacting team deadlines and releases, and this is part of our Q2 design system initiatives. So the framework is as beneficial as you want to make it, and it's as thorough as you want to use it, and it's as structured as you want to be. But what's key is that you start to build that narrative so that you're able to have those conversations with senior stakeholders and management, and you can speak to them in a way which will help them understand the benefits of the design system. And by partnering this with that regular research, this will become more of a natural way of communicating the offering and the value to those other partners within the business. So to summarize the LeanDS with another list of 3 things, I'd say that once you've got your framework, as mentioned before, I'm quite OCD with things, so I really recommend PRD documents, or product requirement documents, but for a design system, because I think they're really helpful. If you've got product support within your design system team, I'd really lean on them to be putting these together if they don't do that already. But they're really beneficial to help ground and build that story of what you're working on. Over communicate everything and don't assume anything when it comes to comms, because you can never communicate too much. People might get really sick of you, but at least they'll know what you're working on, and you're not going to drift into the background. And don't pretend that everything's fine. Be transparent about velocity. Be transparent about scope and risks. Because if you're clear with stakeholders about those potential risks and they know about that upfront, then it just helps them to plan and support you with that. My previous boss, she would always encourage me to communicate the problem, explain why it's a problem, explain the potential impact, and then offer an ideal solution. And that's really, really beneficial to take a little bit more accountability to help move things forward as well. So you're committing and you're sort of getting that buy-in straight away. So as an example of how you might visualize and communicate to senior stakeholders potential impact with, let's say, lack of engineering support, you probably wouldn't put together a slide like this, but just again for illustration purposes, you might try to use something similar to explain to them that it's not that we can't move forward without working with engineers. We're just being pragmatic and saying, that's fine, but just so that you're aware, if we don't get this resource and we don't have this allocation for engineering support, it's going to take a significant longer amount of time. So you're almost getting all cards on the table, having that real kind of transparent conversation, and then everyone knows what to expect. And it just makes it a lot easier, and you mitigate a lot more friction earlier on. So there's no surprises then for anyone. So it's really important to have those tough conversations and start to get comfortable with talking about the things that aren't actually great about the design system offering. And going back to the planning calendar that I showed you before, again, you probably wouldn't have it this way. You can start to break up initiatives through quarters based on the hypotheses that you start to create. So in the same way you would with a kind of product design processes and design thinking, you need to start thinking about clear tracks for that discovery work and then delivery in the same way that you would with the other teams. You can align that with what they're doing if they're all working in the same way, or you can have your different tracks. But I think having a similar process in that sense and using feedback and having that iterative loop, I think it helps you to stay focused and make sure that you're always providing the most benefit that's needed at that specific time. And you're not venturing off into a space where you're just sort of kind of not really connected back to what's happening within the other parts of the business. So quickly to conclude with the final trio of statements, research is fundamental. Don't forget about your users. Connect with them, work with them, speak with them. Speak the language of your business, know your audience, and know how to cater the information for them. What is it that motivates them? What are they interested in? Understand that and really hone into that, because that is really crucial for the success of the design system within the business. And then balance risks with resources. So take calculated risks, but really do stay focused. If you're leading the design system, stay focused on the reality of the scope and what you have control of within the organization. And finally, if you found any of what I've just shared helpful, useful, or interesting, I do have a FigJam file with the canvas on there, which you can get access to if you want to try it out and play around with it, rip it up, start again, like create your own version of it. Feel free to just have some fun with it. And yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There will be slides, so I know a lot of people took photos, and why shouldn't you? It was great. There's a lot of key takeaways here. We're going to move over to the Q&A. I'm going to tell you straight away, there's a lot of questions, and we're not going to have time for all of them, which makes me a bit sad, but also it's not a terrible problem to have. So yeah, if I could please ask the speakers to come back on stage to join me. Would you mind grabbing those two microphones there, actually? There you go. There's one missing. Okay, so if you haven't put your question in, please feel free to put it in, even if there's a lot of questions in there already. There we go. Everyone's got a seat. Good. I'll move over here. This is always the hardest part, is to arrange everyone onto the stage. Okay, so first of all, thank you all of you for fantastic talks. Really good. And thank you to all of you for your questions. We got a lot of them. I'm going to start and get cracking with them. Well, let's see how we get on. So this might probably be a question for all of you, actually. How do you ensure that contribution to the design system are to a high enough quality? That's regarding both designers and developers. How can we ensure that? This was directed at Accurx team, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to answer as well. How do you ensure that the contributions to the design system are to a high enough quality?
Well, I think we're quite lucky at Accurx that we have a bunch of senior devs. So we don't have many like junior devs at Accurx. So I think just at the start, they're all senior 1 and above. So we can generally like, I can actually be like, how to say this? I trust them to make the right choice. But we do have safeguards in place. So we have, I think in our talk, I talked about like raising the foundations of the design package. So we have a really strict like ESLint file. We've added like hygiene templates. So hygiene templates is just basically like boilerplates for your code. And then, yeah, we're kind of improving this contribution model that we're like working on at the moment. So, you know, they're the main things that we're kind of doing at the moment. But, you know, I'm only in this for like 2 months. So, you know, hopefully we can get better.
We'll come back in a few months and ask you again.
Yeah, I mean, oh, wow, that was so much louder. I think the other thing is like our design system is very new. So like quality for us is like a growing thing. Like we probably haven't defined like what high quality is for us fully yet. And I think the benefit of getting contributors in is like they can help us define what that looks like for us together. And I think that's beneficial in itself because it makes everyone part of the process rather than us just governing like this is the quality that it needs to reach. I don't know if you guys have more from your perspective.
We do a number of things. So we have principles that we try to get everyone to align to make sure that everyone's aligned on what is seen as that kind of high level, high quality bar. We've got various checklists that we push back onto the design team to have some accountability over. So there's certain areas which is, you know, it's their job to focus on those things. We've built a Figma plugin as well for them to check their files to make sure they're using all the right token values and things like that. We make sure that there's a lot of cross collaboration with critiques as well to make sure that we are all evaluating and that there's a happy alignment. And on the tech side, well, on the delivery side, one of the things that really helped was to align with the ADMs that we work with to fold in design system kind of quality on as part of the definition of done, so that everybody's quite clear on what that means and what we kind of need to think about to get to that point. So there's some of the things that we try.
I think we've got some similar stuff to you, although ours is a lot fresher. And we even last week we found some bugs in our process. But ours basically comes down to we've got a framework for our developers. So because we've got multiple environments before they get to the live environment, in the developer stage, the developers will work their hardest and they'll use the scope that they've been given. They'll raise as many bugs and questions as they can. But at that point, once they say that they're kind of done, we have a UXer that will look over it from a UX perspective. They'll check accessibility, they'll check browser compatibility and stuff like that. They've got a full long list, which they report back to the developer. But even then, when that's done, depending on the scale of the component, we weigh up that risk and time to be able to be a bit more agile. We then have some of those end users, those producers, also testing it within the CMS and the other systems to kind of then give us their critique of what needs to be changed. But that is still growing for us. It's very early days, but it does allow us to communicate. This component is at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, etc. It allows us to clearly define that and also get an idea of the cost associated with further development.
Yeah, go for it.
It just came. There's another thing that we are trying out as well in regards to like rapid experimentation and how that fits with that quality bar, because obviously teams need to move quite quickly. And one of the things that we've done to help mitigate that is establishing those non-negotiables, you know, because teams do need to move quickly and they want to test quickly, but what are the non-negotiables in terms of like how they're using certain tokens on the design side to help support the design team with that ideation and that kind of space where they're probably in more of a discovery phase and components aren't actually in a stage to make it back into the master library. I think that's quite crucial as well with the quality bar. Like, is it, oh, you don't want to be too kind of restrictive too early if it's not validated and you don't actually know whether it's going to go back into the main library. So we've created something called expansion kits, where that's a safe space for the designers to do their exploration, do a little bit more discovery, and then we can then release those tests, and we then track that and then fold it back into the libraries when we're ready and happy. And that seems to be, so far, working all right for us, but ask me again next year.
Fantastic. I actually think you answered another question that someone asked. This was directed to you. How do you manage and iterate rapidly and dirty fix and do that later versus build a robust, reusable, consistent, future-proof design system? So I think you kind of touched on that question as well with us. So brilliant. Thank you for that. Love when they answer 2 questions in once. That makes things a lot easier. I want to move over to service a bit. So it's going to be a bit of jumping back and forth depending on these questions here. A couple of you mentioned surveys. How do you get the teams to actually fill them out? Because the person who asked this, I think, faces something that we all done when we send out surveys. No one is responding. So how do you guys overcome that?
Lego bricks. This is no. I mean, seriously, that's helpful. Some small incentive, but I mean, I think just sharing what you're using the data for is also really important. Just being like, hey, this is actually helping us make decisions, which ends up benefiting your teams in the end. So we've only done one, so we can't tell you how good the next one will be. I mean, hopefully a lot better. But, you know, I was definitely tackling it from the mindset of just anything is better than nothing. And we got, you know, the majority of the people and going through the survey. So hopefully it's a little bit more next time. I think just not trying to be too hard on yourself at the same time is good. But yeah, Lego is definitely helpful.
I think persistence helps, and getting a little bit creative, I think sometimes helps with that type of thing, because people do get fatigued by that sort of thing. So try and look at those other options. You know, you could run polls in like design sessions that you have. You know, if you've got critiques and you've got a regular session where there's a wider forum of people that you know are going to be there, can you run some polls live in that session? They might be smaller, but you can gather kind of smaller nuggets and insights. So I think getting creative and thinking about the smaller bits of feedback that you can start folding into your process, rather than if going whole hog, like large surveys not working for you, just, yeah, get a bit ninja.
Yeah, I think like on the persistence thing, like don't be afraid to like reach out to someone directly and be like, hey, I really want your specific opinion, because I think people appreciate that as well. Like if you go, hey, like you're an important figure in this space, like I would like your opinion, and you send that to like a few people.
Yeah, flattery works always. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump on the next question. We don't do surveys, is the honest truth. Because we're such a small team, anyone who has a problem moans very quickly. But we love them all to bits. So we often are very reactive at the moment, and that is in the time. But we are expanding the access to the design system, but that tends to be people who aren't actually designers or developers. So I've actually got a slightly different problem at the moment where I'm trying to teach them how to design or look at a page layout with some relative coherence, and teach them some of the finer rules that we kind of put in place as a team, but we can't implement into the design system at a code level. So they're kind of the problems we're kind of facing at the moment. My developer as well hates me. He loves me as well. My senior developer hates me because I have a habit of working in the live environment because I can code, and just breaking things and seeing what's available. And then I'm like, oh, I've got this new challenge for you. So he's still putting up with that at the moment.
Let's see if he keeps doing that. Good. For those surveys, are there any particular questions that you ask, or kind of do you focus more on written answers, or are they rating scale system? What do you find to be most successful to actually get people to get back to?
For us, we're just using like a Likert scale, so like 1 to 5, or is that 1 to 7? I can't remember, but we're doing like a 1 to 5 scale just to get the metrics basically, and then we do some open-ended questions as well to get some more qualitative feedback. I can't tell you if that's better than a different method. I think it was just more about like picking something. But the idea was that we wanted to do this again, the exact same survey, and track the changes over time. So yeah, hopefully that works well. But yeah, it's a new thing. I'm going to be honest, like I'm not an expert in surveys. So like, I think it's just trying something is important. The question I mentioned, one of them was like the sort of like more MPS style question, which is like I feel proud of the design system. I think that was an interesting one to throw in there, just as like a feels type of question. I don't know if that is fully going to tell us everything, but it's a way that we can like track some sort of like general vibes of the design system, I guess.
One thing that I find with surveys that this might just be my experience, is I found that like the teams had to be quite careful with the wording, because design system teams can get perceived as policing and as though people are going to get told off. So I think the language that you use, whatever that might be, you need to angle it in a way that's more inquisitive and curious about, as you were sort of touching on then, like making that process better for them, like understanding their ways of working. If it's like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? It feels quite direct, and as though if they say the wrong answer, they're gonna, and you're not likely then to get a true response, because they're gonna feel like they're gonna get told off or something. So I think thinking about it in that sense and having a mixture, keeping things short enough to get valuable feedback as well, because going back to the fatigue of surveys, I think that is a real problem. And I think make sure that you get that wealth of experience, feedback, and kind of hands-on like feedback on their experience with it, but in a mix of kind of like, I don't know, long answer kind of feedback versus multiple choice. Another thing that that I've done previously, which really helped, was actual usability testing with the design system itself. So sitting down with a designer and just watching them put pages together and just actually watching them use it, like, and that was actually really eye-opening, because we could then see that the way that we perhaps structured components or how they were able to find certain things was quite different to the way that we thought teams were picking up and using components and page templates, etc. So I think that's also quite a helpful way, and you can also get feedback and ask questions then too.
Yeah, you get completely different feedback from you get from a survey.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you touched on it in your talk, like a survey is just a method of getting some particular feedback, but it's like, I wouldn't put too much pressure on like that being the be all and end all for like every type of answer you're going to get. So like, just, yeah, it's not a quick win way to like get everything you want. But if the good thing is, if you view it like that, you don't put so much pressure on like asking every question in a survey. It could just be sort of more like tailored to what types of questions you think would be appropriate for a survey, and then you can lean on other methods to like collect more data, I guess.
Excellent, thank you. So we're going to move over to auditing the design system. Some of you, I think, more in more than one talk that was mentioned. When auditing the design system, do you just audit the system, or do you also audit the live experiences?
I was just specifically looking at the system because, like, coming into the company, I started in June, so I think it was just more about what was in my control at that point, and just getting a understanding of like the team and the processes and what we could work on. But as I've learned more about the projects that we're working on, I'm just learning more from the product designers, product teams working in those spaces. So I think in some ways it's actually not appropriate to audit the product itself if you can learn from the people that are working in it day to day as well. So I'm really leaning on those people to get those answers. I don't know if it's similar for you guys if you've done auditing.
I've done like both ways. So I think it depends on the problem that you're solving, like with your design system. Prior to ITV, I was at CNN, where the system was more of a multi-brand system. So the problem was slightly different. So that was more looking at not just the system components, but how like that wider brand ecosystem was working, and like discrepancies between, because that was quite complex with the different teams. ITV is one brand, ITVX, sorry, is one brand, but different platforms. So it's technically is more complicated in that sense. So that's been more of approach of like the system audit to get more under the hood and look at like how that's structured and working across those varied platforms. So I think it does depend on, it's not like a one sort of track approach for everything. I think it depends on what you're trying to do and solve for. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, excellent. Makes sense. So I've got to move on to a different topic, and obviously we can't have a meetup in these days without mentioning AI. I've noticed that it hasn't been mentioned once so far. I don't think, unless I missed it. But this is a question for RSPCA here. Have you been using AI to assist with accessibility testing, and what impact has, if you have, so what impact has that brought to the design system or the product?
Yeah, we've had a bit of a fun relationship with that. See, there's the kind of AI will solve everything, but it really won't. We're not using it for testing, mostly because we still kind of believe in trying to do that accessibility testing through other means. And one of the things that we're doing is collaborating with other charities, who, you know, they've got people who are disabled in all sorts of manners who would love a voice. So always reach out to a charity. They'll ask you for a donation. They deserve it because they'll be doing you a favor. But they're really hungry to help because it really impacts their audiences. But where we've kind of learned to use AI is lots of little snippets, and building on it very conversationally with the AI. So we do use AI with accessibility, but more around supporting teams with alt text or checking the reading age of the content so that we can control the amount of content coming in. Advising on, you've given this definition, here's a simpler way of defining it. So it's kind of, how do we capture those problems before they become an issue? AI has been really helpful there. Yep.
Anyone else got utilized AI in any way for the design system in any shape or form?
It's quite difficult for us to get it through the door. There's like such a huge like legal process. But one of the things that we are looking to explore, we use Zero Height for our design system website. So there is the documentation AI feature within Zero Height, which is quite appealing to us. So we're curious about that, but we're in the motions of going through the whole. So I don't really have anything to share in regards to how that's working, but it's something that we're interested in to like alleviate some of that work where we can.
I should add, I asked for forgiveness, not permission. My boss is in the room, but I pay for several AIs out of my own pocket, because and I make sure the data is private. But it is quite helpful. But we are pushing as a charity towards that AI. Actually, we're going for a huge digital transformation on that. So it might be an NGO thing, but we're definitely seeing it as one of the ways that we can keep up with a lot of other people, especially the tech world, when you've got teams of 18 or however many big designer and developer teams. Yeah, how we can utilize our resources.
Excellent, thank you. You mentioned Zero Height. Some of you might be familiar with this as a documentation tool. There are other tools out there as well, I should mention that. Speaking of which, when we're talking about design system documentation, all of you, is it mainly Storybook or Zero Height, or is there something else particularly for developers to look at? How do you do that documentation?
Yeah, so I mentioned in the talk, like we were building a Zero Height website for our documentation when I first joined, but it was sort of quite a mammoth piece of work to create a whole new documentation site. And given that we have all these other things like migrating our components and like understanding what problems we needed to solve, I kind of killed the project. Sorry to who started that. But I think I wanted to take an approach where like we're realistically a team of 2 people, and like creating a documentation website I know takes a lot of time to do well. And so I'm really trying to focus on getting documentation out there and usable first, and then, you know, in time when we have more capacity, more resource, then build up that documentation, maybe explore how we can centralize that for developers and designers. But I think being realistic about your capacity is like really, really important, because what's more valuable, like working on perfect documentation that gets released in like 18 months time or 2 years or something, or actually having some, you know, semi all right documentation for all your components available in Figma and Storybook. I mean, I think it's pretty like obvious when you say it like that, and the being able to get to that second one is much easier with a team of 2 than the first one. I know also from my previous experience at Xero, we spent, I think, 6 years working on a new documentation website, and I don't think it's released yet still. So it's like, it can be like a never ending project. So.
I mean, yeah, I am yet to finally release the documentation for the design system in full. We don't use Zero Height. We just got a custom built website that's available internally to people that are on the VPN and the network. When we did the relaunch, we had to work with multiple third-party developers, and the honest truth was just to expose them to the code using CodePen. That was the only way we could do it for some of it. And I spent a lot of hours reading over code, correcting people's utility classes and all sorts of things, and the structures that they should do, because I found that they still kind of wanted to go off and find their own solutions. Again, using AI as well, because I taught the AI a lot of that by giving it my CSS files, my HTMLs, my examples, my code snippets. I was able to then kind of say, right, can you review this code for me and pick out the highlights? Yeah, at my scale, it was all I could do. But there are still faults, and we're still correcting code.
So before we wrap up, I'm going to ask a couple of questions about alignment, leadership, and also I think you guys mentioned that your design system was retired. How did you get it back in? What did you have to do to kind of get that confidence back to the stakeholders?
Yeah, it was really bad. So it got to the point where, yeah, it was just taking so long to develop like new features even inside of a component. It was, yeah, developers spending way more time just trying to add like, oh, I don't know, hide an icon in a select box or whatever, and it just became just unusable. So we ended up just, like I said in the talk, we ended up doing a retro. That retro just ended up bringing a bunch of like issues and like problems that we just had to solve. And it was just a matter of like prioritizing which of those issues we could like go out and like hit first. And then, yeah, luckily we had like a good ahead of design and ahead of engineering. We're already kind of like on board with it. So it wasn't so difficult in persuading them to like move that forward. It was just like trying to get the higher stakeholders to agree to it, but then we had to like talk about, you know, consider how we could speed up product flows and product like building and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't too difficult because we had like a base already there. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't partake in that process, so it's hard to talk about it.
That's okay. So a follow-up question to that, and then actually goes to all of you. So considering, and this is probably something that some of you are thinking about, I know I think about it often, considering the effort in building the design system, do you think it's providing the business with what it needs? Love that question. let's start from this and go through all of you and see, now that you're on it, do you think it is actually providing what we wanted it to?
There's a lot of flaws, and I think it will take I doubt it'll be finished by the time I leave. But I definitely think it is. When we kind of first talked about the idea of a design system, we branded it and called it Keystone. That's how we kind of got a bit of energy around it and got a bit of buy-in, which was really good, and that's stuck around and really made a bit of energy as we've really shown some impact. I think the bit that we're seeing at the moment is, especially over the last kind of couple of months, where we've really learned to utilize the tools, and we're expanding at a kind of a different rate than we ever did before. Like I said in the talk, we can make a prototype in a week, and for a charity who, like, sometimes they would put a project on and it would take 3 years, and then someone would leave and it would never get finished. You know, so to kind of go from possibly never actually doing anything to getting something in a week, yeah, it's a huge difference.
Absolutely. I think where to start with it? We when I arrived, one of the things that I tried to focus on with the team was like where we were at in terms of the ways of working and the things that weren't really going particularly well, and that was really helpful to then start to look at cost savings. So one of the big things that's helped to show the benefits back to the business is the amount of money that we're saving now through cost savings, because there's a huge reduction in time that the design team are, you know, they had such a laborious process before in regards to how they were creating components and files, and that whole handover process was pretty wild. And I think that just from like one single kind of project handover, it was like 20,000 that we were saving just in like effort and time, which was pretty mad to see what was happening before. So to be able to talk about those numbers back to the business, I think has really helped. And rapid experimentation is like really like is like a design system's best friend if teams can use it to help to propel forward in that way. And one of the things that has been really awesome to see is that in our product and design and tech show and tells and all hands, like the large company sessions that we do, we often hear like the product team talking about how they were able to do certain tests and move faster because of the design system. So when you start to hear other people and other teams and other areas of the business start hyping up and talking about the design system, I think that's when you can give yourself a bit of a pat on the back and be like, I think we're doing all right with this. But it is a bit of a process, and I think you have to be quite resilient with communicating and getting that buy-in and finding those hype people. But they will be really beneficial.
And for you guys?
Yeah, it is definitely beneficial. Like, we have like 10 years go out to like NHS trusts, and a lot of it's to do with like accessibility. So once we run audits on like all of our, like a majority of our website, they always come back with, you know, some sort of like accessibility problem, but having one centralized place where we fix it just speeds up the whole process. And then tenders are like much easier to like explain and say, yeah, we've already done this. And so, yeah.
Yeah, from a design side, I think, you know, the proof will be in the pudding. I hope we can get the data over time to be able to say, like, we're saving X amount of money. I think that's like where you can be, you know, show it to the top dogs and be like, this is really beneficial. I mean, obviously we think it's beneficial. This is why we do what we do. But yeah, I mean, even just through like design drop-in sessions, like having the engagement grow, I think that's been really cool to just hear people say like, oh, is that a component? You know, I mean, those types of things are really what I think make me feel like it's working. And, you know, we're still early days. So yeah, we'll see.
So I asked that question because I was hoping that we were all going to say yes, because otherwise this would be a really sad ending. So I'm really glad that everyone said yes to that. There were so many questions, and I really, really wish that we had more time to take more questions, but unfortunately we don't. So I want to thank all of you so much for your fantastic talks. Massive round of applause to these guys. You are all relieved while I wrap up. So I do have, actually, there's two questions here that I think are quite funny. One of them is more of a comment. It's basically saying that they do not work for Accurx, but they would like to one of those Lego pieces. So if you identify yourself, yes, there we go. So brilliant. And also big shout out to RSPCA for that pet pun. Obviously, you can't have that, so that was brilliant. Okay, so this takes us to wrap up. Before I let you all go, so obviously we need some thank yous. I've already thanked the speakers so much. I want to thank all of you for coming here today and the community. Obviously, we are nothing without you, so I really appreciate that you guys came here in the cold, but yes. So thanks for that. I want to say a massive thank you to the Accurx team for having us in this, as I said, very homely venue. Really appreciate that. Thanks to everyone who has been running around, making sure everything works. Obviously to the YLD team who has been doing all the logistics. I only turn up and talk. These guys are the ones who's actually doing all the work behind it. So we'll be back with more DSL very soon. We are always looking for work, and also remember that Accurx are looking for, we are looking for work and for people to come and work with us. So please speak to us and get in touch. Accurx is also looking for people, so this is a great thing. I believe we have one surprise thing, yes. So this is my Oprah moment. Obviously you can't go to a conference without getting a goodie bag. This is not a conference, this is a meetup. So there is one goodie bag that's been hidden under a chair. So all of you look under, this is what Oprah does. You get a car, you get a car. We don't have cars, we have one goodie bag. So if you look under your chair, there should be stuck a card to it. And before everyone gets too excited, it's not this card. This is a very exciting card, but that's not the winning card. It's a design system. Look, we have a winner. Fantastic, brilliant. So if you go and see the lovely people here from YLD at the back, they will get you your goodie bag. That's obviously a good enough reason to come back to the next one, because you go like, I need a goodie bag. When is the next one, you may wonder? Well, look at this. Design System London 11, sponsored with Sainsbury's. I believe that we might have some people from Sainsbury's here today. So, yes, we got people waving like, yeah, we are Sainsbury's. Basically, we'll see you there on the 19th of February, 2025. Ooh, that's the first time I said 2025. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But if you scan this code, you know I love my QR code. If you scan it, for those of you who got your eagle eyes on, there is a early bird, there's a lot of puns here. There's an early bird link to sign up to that. So I would also say, apologies for all of you when you got here, Eventbrite is the one place to sign up. So for future reference, it's always the Eventbrite link, and this should take you to the Eventbrite link so you can be an early sign up. So get your ticket now. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're coming to the social mixture, and why shouldn't you? There are lots of questions you have that you need to ask people. I'll be there if you can ask me some of the questions as well. Horse and Groom. We're on 7 Curtin Road. It's on 28 Curtin Road, which I have been told is just on the other side of the... Yeah, so waving over here at the side of the street. Perfect. Brilliant. And that's it. Thank you so much for coming to Design System London 10, and see you in 2025.